afternoon. Welcome to our experiment at having the public meeting for City for Champions later in the day. We are responding to social media requests that we schedule it after work, and so that is why we changed the time from 4 to 5:30. And my name is Stephanie Finley. I serve as the facilitator for the public meetings, and we're delighted you are here. So I expect people will be coming in as we talk, but feel free to make this very interactive. That's one of our goals, is that we have the chance to hear from you, that we answer any questions you might have, that we do follow-ups with different things that come up during the meetings, and that people walk away from here with a better sense of what's going on. Commissioner Lathan is going to talk a little bit about why there's a little bit of lull in what's happening right now, but we're just delighted you're here. So I'm going to turn it over to you and let you go with that.
Thank you. Thanks, folks, for coming out. It's kind of gorgeous out there. I've been in, we just adjourned our Board of County Commissioners meeting about 45 minutes ago, so we've been inside for a while, and there are a lot of folks who I know are out there, and I appreciate you taking the time to be in here with us. That really means a lot to us, and we want to be here for you. So welcome. We are going to, I just want to talk about a little bit of housekeeping. Of course, the promise that we made and that we really want to do to make this the most open and best process that we possibly can as we go through this journey together is to have these monthly meetings that you can count on to come and talk to people involved in the projects from the city, from the county, from all of the project elements, get updates as we have information, and ask questions and really kind of track along with us. And so that's been the purpose of these, and we've had some big meetings and we've had smaller meetings like tonight, and we're just going to continue to do that to make sure that your questions are being answered and that we're hearing from you and able to respond to those things and keep on moving. I will tell you that in July, we are not going to have a meeting just because it's July. And July is kind of, obviously, there are a lot of families who go on vacation, staff, folks who are involved in all the projects, obviously all of you, members of the public. We're just going to take a break just for the month of July. And then we will get information out into the media about when we resume in August. And I think that we're going to try a few new things in August, maybe a new format, some different ways to do things. And here's the other piece of things. Right now, we're still in a holding pattern, waiting on the state as it relates to the resolution. And so it's kind of slow. We're kind of uneventful, unexciting right now because we are waiting for the state and waiting for some things to move to the next steps. And so certainly there's always information to share, but probably a little less of that right now until we have more information regarding the resolution and the next steps. And so August will be a great month to come back and regroup and get you new information that we will have by that time and talk about some new things. So I just want to say welcome and thank you for being here. I'm going to hand it back to Stephanie because she knows the order of things. But we really do want to obviously just share with you, listen to you, and track along with the exciting potential that we have in the City for Champions project. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Commissioner Lathan, and thank you for your commitment to holding these meetings. I will say that people are watching on TV because I had a man come up to me in a meeting the other day and tell me what a great job I had done at one of the meetings. I think that, well, we won't go into why he thought it because I think he's crazy, but he said, good job, and I knew he hadn't been at the meeting. I said, have you seen this? And he's TV. We're on air right there. So we have people at home who are watching and want to know what's going on as well. So welcome to them. And now, Laura Newman, our community advocate extraordinaire, somebody who signed up, said, I want to help with City for Champions, and we're going to get an update from you. So it is your turn. Oh, here's your mic.
Good evening, everyone. And may I just know from a show of hands how many people have been to one of our public meetings before? Okay, so the majority. I'm going to talk about 15 minutes tonight just to put some things in perspective and repeat about 3 minutes of what I've shared before because I think it's important. And first is, why am I standing in front of you? Who am I? And I guess I have some unique background that I worked for the City of Colorado Springs for 26 months as the city's chief of staff, so certainly had exposure to what the citizens expect from city services, so that was unique. But prior to that, I had 24 years in the hospitality business with Benchmark Hospitality International. So tourism and resort and hotel is basically where I grew up my career. And then when you add on top that I'm a very passionate mom with 2 active teenagers that love this community, I really just couldn't say no to this group to come forward and say, how can I help? And if I can play a small role in the success of City for Champions, I'll feel like I've given back to this community. So that's why I'm here tonight. And before I talk through a little bit about some of the community conversations we've had, try to answer some of the tough questions that we get. It seems like every so many weeks we attend some meeting with some folks and we get asked a question we don't know, and so we've agreed to circle back and attempt to address those with all of you. But before I get into that, I think it's important that we set the stage, and is someone operating the slideshow? Oh, you are? Okay, good. Thanks, Steph. We look back at the stages of Colorado Springs and the history so that we understand where did the City for Champions projects actually come from, because they didn't happen overnight. They've been building for the past 150 years. So first is I want to talk about General Palmer and founding this city as a resort destination where he envisioned Colorado Springs over 150 years ago as a little London. And then, prior to that, there certainly was the gold rush, and over 100,000 people came here to find their fame and fortune back in 1858. But by 1900, what we were known for all those years ago was a wellness destination. People that suffered from tuberculosis came here to lessen the signs of consumption. So they came to our city for that very reason. And resort-like sanitariums like the Cragmore were established for that reason, and that's the very site that our beloved UCCS sits today. And then post-World War II, we became a destination for military installations. And the United States Air Force Academy was established in 1954, so another part of our identity back in the 50s. Then in 1978, we became the proud home of the U.S. Olympic Training Center. We were the first of 3 to be built, and it's on the former Ent Air Force Base, which was selected specifically for athletes to train at high altitude. Then we experienced some unprecedented high-tech growth as well as nonprofit. However, in the past 12 years, hundreds of those high-tech jobs have been eliminated. And so we hit that high and we've fallen since that time. But we did have a chapter where we were known for high tech. And so that sets the stage for a very rich and vibrant history that isn't just 2 years or 3 years old, it's 150 years old. And so for the past 150 years, if you think back, someone else was writing our story, and then we inherited it. And we're in a very unusual and very defining moment in our history where we have the ability to craft the next several chapters of Colorado Springs. And that's where I believe the City for Champions comes in, is to capitalize what we've been known for so very long and become the tipping point for all the things that could follow with those 4 projects. And I just want to remind the group, and I don't mean to be redundant, but I want to just share real quickly the slides of the 4 projects themselves, and of course let anyone speak as they wish on specifics. But certainly the U.S. Olympic Museum site, which I know Governor Celeste will talk a little bit about, the Colorado Sports and Events Center, the Sports Medicine and Performance Center, as well as the Gateway Visitor Center at the United States Air Force Academy. So those are the 4 projects. But I'm also going to touch a little bit later that it's not really just about those 4 buildings. It's about the and the catalytic effect that they could bring to our community. So I just want to keep that in mind. But I want to follow up from some questions and comments that were posted at our last meeting, as well as some that came through via the website and some other community conversations. And many of these questions are asked numerous times, so I think it's important that we speak about them publicly. And in our last meeting, there was a gentleman with Olson Plumbing, Mike Trapp, and I don't know if you're back in the audience, Mr. Trapp, but I'm going to summarize this because I think it's important for the group to know, because it made the headlines of the Gazette the following day. And I just need the group to understand that although it appeared there had not been any community conversations with this very important business owner downtown, there indeed had. But regardless, he felt there hadn't been enough. So there have been 2 specific meetings with city officials as well as a master developer about the impact these projects could have on Mr. Trapp. And I think if you gave him a call, you would hear that he thinks it's resolved, that he knows what's going on, and that we're in good communication with him. And so I just wanted to state that because he was pretty vocal at the last meeting. And another gentleman that I know is here in the second row, Anthony Perez, he was speaking on behalf of the NAACP, and basically that were we reaching that audience, and were we hearing them, and were they receiving the education that they would like, and be able to have a really good dialogue, if I'll try to summarize. And if I don't do a good job, when it's time for the microphone, please correct me. But we have had ongoing conversations and exchange of a few emails, and I don't know if there's a woman by the name of Janice that represents the Urbanites in the audience tonight, but she's not here, thank you. We have a meeting set up on June 25th to meet with that specific group, do a brief presentation like we'll do here tonight, and then of course, more importantly, start that dialogue and hear the feedback. So thank you for that opportunity, Anthony. Also, Susan Saska with Leadership Pikes Peak was in the last audience, and I don't see her here tonight. And basically, she offered up something that I guess we wish we would have thought of on our own, but a very great idea. And that is, why don't we take these wonderful community citizens and business professionals that go through her program and volley a big, thorny issue, something related to City for Champions, and let them work on it, and let them come back to us and have a voice. And we say we love that idea. We haven't been able to fully vet it out, but we will be prepared to address that more in depth at our August meeting, if not before. So I wanted to say thank you to Susan. Then there has been many questions as it relates to a ballot vote. In fact, maybe that's the most often asked question publicly or via our website. And I just want to reiterate to the group that if it is determined that local municipal bonding is part of the future of City for Champions, particularly as it relates to the downtown venue, Mayor Bach has openly committed that he will come forward with a citizen vote. Okay, so that has been a statement made, but maybe it's not been one that has been well publicized, but I just want to reiterate that to the group tonight as it relates to a ballot vote if it impacts the taxpayers. And finally, there's recently been a question, I think it's because summer is upon us, that this question came forward, and the head of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, Doug Price, is not here tonight, but he's in a very special place, which I'm going to touch on before I turn the microphone over. But I wanted to just mention there was some criticism as it relates to why does the Convention and Visitors Bureau market these other areas outside of Colorado Springs, because it is the lodging automobile rental tax that is used to fund the CVB as well as some other avenues. And so why do we focus time on, let's say, the Royal Gorge and some of the areas that fall outside of the city? And they are contractually obligated to represent 3 different counties. So that's number one. They're contractually obligated, so they best do it. But there is a great benefit to them doing that for Colorado Springs, because many studies have been done. I think there's 55 very specific attractions to Colorado Springs and the surrounding areas. And those that use those attractions primarily stay here in Colorado Springs. They use our hotels, they use our restaurants, they buy our retail. And so therefore it behooves us to market those other wonderful attractions to bring people to our community. So I wanted to touch on that. And so why does tourism, like I just mentioned, matter so much to us? Why do we spend so much time talking about it? And from my prior time in the city, this is something that's I have intimate knowledge of and struggled with as we tried to balance the budget, just so you know, and turn back on all the wonderful services that our citizens have demanded from us. 60% of our general fund, give or take a point, comes from sales tax. And the only way we're going to get sales tax if those of us who live here buy more stuff, or we have more visitors that come here and buy more stuff. And so that's why tourism matters so much to us. And I wanted to take a moment and talk about just some numbers as it relates to some of the things on the horizon for the summer season. And the first is Speed Week. Now, who knew it was called that? I just now got that term. Now, I certainly know about the Race to the Clouds, and I know about the hill climb, but I didn't know there was a whole Speed Week that had a crescendo of that big ride up the mountain or drive up the mountain. And starting June 20th, all the way through June 29th is what is known as Speed Week. And there is a fan fest downtown on the 27th, and there's chili and motorcycle jumping and fast cars and things happening downtown. But there's also a brand new event coming to our community on that Friday and Saturday, which is this incredible, Bob Smalling will be wondering, where am I going with this? But there's these really fast car races. We're going to close down some of the airstrips, and they have clock cars racing at over 224 miles an hour. So why is that important? Why are fast cars driving up the peak or driving all over the airport and parties and chili and beer? Why is that important to you? This 1 week, 20,000 spectators from around the world come to our community. And so if that doesn't give you some perspective, know that those 20,000 spectators generate approximately $6.6 million in sales during that particular period of time. That's just one of our events. And so I could mention so many more. We could talk about the Pikes Peak or Bus Rodeo coming up in July, which has 30,000 participants, and they generate $4 million from that event. The Pikes Peak Ascent and Marathon in August, that's about 3,000 participants with a $3 million impact. Or the beloved Pro Cycling Challenge, which is a statewide event and just has far-reaching financial impact across the state as well as in our backyard. And so what is the association between these things I just mentioned, the Ascent and the Rodeo and Speed Week and so forth? What does that have to do with City for Champions? And from my perspective, those projects capitalize what we're already known for, what I just mentioned, athleticism, okay, pro, semi-pro, common man sports, the goosebumps you get from being near a 14er where America the Beautiful was penned at the top. All of those projects are associated with what we already really do very well here in the community. And so if you're still thinking, okay, I get why they want those projects, and I get that those monies will do great things for our citizens, you might want to know really what could be in it for you as it relates to City for Champions. And the first point is mentioned. We have received the verbal approval of $120.5 million, which is unprecedented, an incentive for economic development here in our community. And some really bright minds worked very hard to achieve that, and that should be celebrated. And with that monies comes an estimated 500,000 new visitors out of state that had no other reason to come to our community. That's what 3 different economists vetted the reports and said 500,000 brand new out-of-state visitors will come in and spend money and drive sales tax. So that's number 1. Number 2 is there are jobs that will be generated by these 4 projects, and we're not even talking about the and yet. We're talking about just the 4 projects alone. Those 3 economists estimated 5,100 jobs would be generated, with about 2,900 in the construction, architectural design, constructing those buildings, but another 2,200 jobs that are permanent And they are moderate to high-paying jobs. Many people talk about, oh, you mean the popcorn salespeople downtown that will work at the stadium. No, we're talking about people that are in healthcare. We're talking about sports performance professionals. We're talking about management-level positions. And so there's a big job flux that comes along with City for Champions. And then there is what I mentioned, the third item, and it's really the great unknown, although I know a lot of really great, smart people are already thinking about it, and that's the and. That's the catalytic coming after when these projects are built. And so imagine that. When something like this goes into our community, retail pops up, residential pops up, other things people have desired, the potential of a children's museum, a science museum, all those things could be part of that tipping point of City for Champions. And I think that's what some people find so very exciting, is the and. And so before I turn the meeting back over to Stephanie, I wanted to share just a couple of pictures, and I'm so sorry. We received 10 incredible pictures right before we walked in here, and those are our Colorado Springs delegation over in ancient Olympia, Greece, as I say this. And this first picture up above that you'll see is our Colorado Springs. Notice that they're beaming, by the way. Each and every one of them are so very proud. The gentleman in the middle is the U.S. ambassador to Greece, David Pierce. And so that was the celebration yesterday when they were together. But the pictures we just received just moments ago are the actual establishing, the actual ceremony of becoming sister cities. And branding Colorado Springs is America's Olympic City. And so if you are part of Facebook, please go to the City for Champions website, because you're going to see pictures that just give you goosebumps. Like they're releasing a dove. It's a symbol of peace. You'll recognize a lot of faces in those pictures, and you'll see a lot of great pride in our Colorado Springs delegation, because that just happened. Were you going to say something? On Facebook. What did I say? Website? Thank you. Thank you for that correction, Facebook. And we want you to be able to share in that celebration and that momentous occasion that just occurred several hours ago. The last question, or the last thing I'd like to touch on, is how do you get involved? And you can look up here and you can see this slide is certainly visit the website and all the social media outlets, whatever you're familiar with, whatever you're comfortable with, Facebook, Twitter, etc., because you'll get constant communication as it regards to, even during this lull time as we wait for the resolution to be signed, we do update it with any new information. We capture your names, those of you who want to get involved. We're keeping them in a database, so when things start happening, we know who we can call on. So thank you very much for your interest in coming here tonight, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. And if you have questions of me, I will certainly be on hand to answer any questions at the end. So, Stephanie, yes?
I'm just going to take advantage of Speed Week. It's not actually the same week, but in El Paso County, you may not know, we have a dirt track out in Calhan, Colorado. And on July 19th, the opening of the El Paso County Fair, we have Kenny Wallace and Kenny Schrader, two NASCAR drivers, coming out to participate in races that night. So we got NASCAR coming to El Paso County. We've got a whole bunch of drivers coming in from outside of El Paso County, bringing their dollars in. And it just goes along with Speed Week and all that we're talking about. So I couldn't let that pass without a little bit of a homer and calling out the El Paso County Fair on July 19th. Get your tickets and go out and check out the NASCAR race.
That's great. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Laura. Because the state is working on the resolution right now, and several of the project managers have to wait for what the state comes back with before we can begin, we've chosen just to have people here to answer questions, should you have any. But we're going to spotlight one project today. And we're so excited to have Governor Dick Celeste here to talk to us about the Olympic Museum, especially in light of what Laura just said about ancient Olympian and how exciting that is. So we're looking forward to hearing your update.
Thanks very much, Stephanie. Commissioner Latham and Laura and friends, it's nice to be with you this evening. I've missed the last couple of meetings, and Andy Doyle has represented us, but she had family obligations today, and I wanted to be here tonight because Friday I'm going to demonstrate my loyalty to local health care and get a new knee at Memorial North. So I may not be, well, I should be back by August. I better darn well be in in shape by August, I'll work at it. I wanted to just bring you up to date. Obviously, we're all interested in what the commission in Denver says finally in terms of legal language will be terms for how the tax increment financing will operate and what our obligations are. But from the museum standpoint, we've moved ahead very aggressively because we've calculated every month that we delay the final opening of the museum, it's going to add $100,000 to the cost of the museum. That's money we have to go out and raise, and so we're going to try to keep things moving fast. We have been involved in extensive conversations with the U.S. Olympic Committee because one of the requirements the state spelled out, it's certainly a requirement from our standpoint as well, is that we have to have a formal agreement, a contract with the U.S. Olympic Committee that will allow us to use the U.S. Olympic Committee language, logo, more importantly, substantive support so that the museum is, in fact, the Museum and Hall of Fame for the USOC. That's all right. We can just leave it. I don't need it. The U.S. Olympic Committee board met this past week, and we believe that we're very close to having a signed agreement that we can make public as soon as we have it signed. So my hope would be, if not before I get my new knee, as soon as I get out of the 2 days or 3 days in the hospital early next week, we will have a signature and an announcement that we can share with all of you. That's vitally important because it will enable us to begin to we've had informal conversations with a number of foundations and individuals. Every one of them says, okay, we're really interested, we're excited about this. Do you have an agreement with the USOC? And you know, the answer has been, for now, yes, we're working on it, but we don't yet have it. So that will really lift the gate on our efforts to be able to formally present requests for significant funding support from foundations and individuals here in town, across the state, and I might add around the country. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we also have been moving forward to put together the professional team that will develop and build, design, create, and build a Museum and Hall of Fame. And there are 5 categories of professionals that will make up this team. And a design architect, I call them the prima donna. If we're going to build an iconic building, we will have a design architect, I'm sure, who has very, very grand ideas. Then an architect of record, and the architect of record is a Colorado architect. This is somebody who is going to be there every day to make sure that the building is built right, and the architect of record will actually control the design architect. The third very important participant is the general contractor, construction manager. And then key to any museum like this, which is really an experience museum. It's not just that we want to be able to see a torch that was carried into the Olympics. We'd like to feel what it's like to carry the torch into the Olympics. We'd like to know what it's like to challenge Jesse Owens to a race and race against him, or swim against Michael Phelps, or skate with Peggy Fleming, or whatever. So exhibit design and exhibit fabrication become really important. And we've decided that in order to do this right, and to do it right means the best quality and the closest eye on cost, is to bring the team together at the beginning, have everybody working from day one. So 2 weeks ago, we interviewed 4 of the 5 categories. I mentioned the construction managers. We interviewed 4 of the 5 categories. These were finalists of earlier submissions. We had 4 people, 4 firms considered for architect of record, 4 firms considered for contractor, 3 firms for exhibit design, and 3 firms for exhibit fabrication. We've narrowed our choices down to a number one in each category except for exhibit design. Two of the exhibit design firms were very, very competitive, and we want to actually go out and look at work they've done and try to get a better evaluation of that. But one of the reasons why we haven't made any announcements yet is we have to negotiate contracts with each of these firms. And if we can't negotiate a contract with firm number one for construction, we'll go to firm number two. These were all outstanding firms. It wasn't like we were having to choose between quality and not so much quality. So I would hope that within the next 2 weeks to the 30 days, we would have contracts with all of these professional teams. We are going to interview design architects in mid-July. And the reason for that is that we want to be able to have input from our contractor and our architect of record when we get to interviewing design architects. So hopefully before the end of the summer, we will be in a position to share with all of you, all of the firms who represent the team that will design and build the museum. I can say that you will recognize the names of almost all of them. So it'll be exciting.
Thank you, Governor. That is exciting. That is something extraordinary to have your leadership, to work with the USOC, and to have something that's going to have long-lasting impact for this region. So I just want to say thank you to you for your
I have a
tenacity.
teenager too. I mean, I know I'm old, but I have a teenager too. So
There
I'm
you
not going
go.
to let Laura just say it's her teenager. So my teenager, I care about it, right?
That's right. That is right. And you are so tenacious, and we appreciate what you're doing for everyone. So thank you. So not only do we have great leadership with these projects and a lot of just wonderful public servants who are involved in getting this done, it's the citizen passion behind it that has been so inspiring. And so at every meeting, we try to incorporate one of our citizens who's really stepped up and has gotten excited about this project. And December 4th of last year was a big day for many of us. We remember that very well, don't we, Bob? And it was the day that it snowed terribly, but many people got on a bus or drove in their cars and came to Denver and spoke out in support of this initiative. And several of the people we had never met before, and one of them was Ryan Geiger. And you came on December 4th to talk about why you thought this was a good idea and to tell the Economic Development Commission your story. And we were so inspired by your story that we asked you to come tell it today. And we were even doubly delighted when you brought your family with you. So if you don't mind, would you introduce your family as well?
Absolutely. Thanks, Stephanie, for the opportunity and everybody to come speak. I'd like to introduce my wife, Janelle, and my son, Lucas, and my teenager, Grady. We all came here from Indiana, and so they've been kind enough to let me tell my remarks and give the background on how this whole came to be. So, but really what I wanted to do first is bring my son, Grady, up. He prepared some comments about the difference between what he's seen here versus there, and I'd like him to get up here and tell a few. Don't be nervous. It's just like a few dozen people.
So we lived in Indiana before we moved to Colorado, and originally there was really not much to do outside of be at home, maybe watch TV or go and play some sports. But eventually they built a baseball stadium, and there they had baseball games, and then they'd have fireworks afterwards. And they hosted half marathons, they had concerts there, and that was really the start of getting able to do things downtown and where we used to live. But Colorado Springs has been a little different for us. We've been able to find things to do anywhere, whether it's going to Garden of the Gods, going to hike, whether it's just you can hike basically anywhere. And then But then you can also go for a short drive and go to the dunes or go to Green Mountain Falls or go skiing in the many resorts. Another big thing here is downtown. There's lots of different restaurants. Like I just found a favorite breakfast restaurant a few weeks ago, and you can go to a bunch of the different shops, and you could go to the Five Diamond Resort, Broadmoor, and go maybe stop in one of the shops or eat lunch there or something. You could go to the zoo that's on the side of a mountain, and go to Will Rogers Shrine and look out at Kansas. Another big difference from Colorado Springs from Indiana was I was just at the gym the other day playing basketball, and I ran into the NBA Hall of Famer Rick Barry, and he gave me 15 minutes of help on how to shoot better and whatever, while my mom was talking to his wife, and I was invited to his classes, his wife's classes. And then Peyton Manning and Wes Welker ended up stopping by my junior high right before I moved.
Right before we moved.
Yeah. And then, but in Indiana, the only thing I really got to get close to a professional or a famous person was the former Colts coach, Tony Dungy. And I was 6 years old, and we didn't even really get to meet him because it was so packed. But the difference between those three occasions is Peyton Manning, Wes Welker, and Rick Barry. They were all casual events. Like I was just at the gym and I ran into an NBA Hall of Famer. When the Tony Dungy meeting was a planned out event. When I get older, I'm not moving, that's for sure. There are lots of opportunities here, whether it comes to sports, whether it comes to like I could be walking down the street and see a guy wearing an Olympic t-shirt. I don't know if he's in the Olympics, but next thing I know, I'm watching the Olympics the next time they're on, and I see that guy walking down the road. There's opportunities for there's good education, and you can just have an all-around good time.
Thanks, dude. Thanks, dude. So, like you said, we moved here from Indiana, more specifically Fort Wayne, Indiana. But you know, the question that we often get is, what brought you to Colorado? The short answer is Colorado brought us to Colorado. You know, the thing is, though, the longer we live here and the more I think about, you know, that question in general, the more I realize that I used to ask that question myself of those who moved there. Lots of corn and soybeans, chickens, flat land, you know, jobs were moving to Mexico and beyond, not much to do outdoors. Brutal winters, Governor Celeste, you know about these. Brutal winters that sometimes you don't see the sun for like 2 weeks at a stretch. I mean, it's awful. So it's pretty safe to say that Indiana was not a destination. So it was a fair question. What brought you to Indiana? So when I used to ask people that question, I actually had reason to, because our own people, high school, college graduates, they were moving out in decent numbers. And the city had been busy actually on annexation at that point to try to stem that loss of tax dollars. So if they're moving out, why are you moving in? Of my close personal circle of friends, I was one of the half that did not move to Portland, Chicago, Indianapolis, or elsewhere. And of my older cousins, 3 of them moved to Phoenix, Denver, Atlanta. So what actually brought us, the Geiger family, to Colorado? Well, here's the long answer on that one. I'd say about 7 years ago, this is 2007, when our boys were 6 and 3, we started wondering what it would actually be like to live someplace other than Fort Wayne. We weren't homeowners at the time, so that gave us a little bit of mobility. And my wife was the first one to ask the question, but I was a little reluctant. I'd lived there my entire life, and I was comfortable, so I thought. So the conversation started small, but either way, we began to think about cities like Indianapolis, and then maybe the suburbs of Chicago, Cincinnati, maybe. We just didn't know. So we'd hit a crossroads. It was either leave town or settle there. And so in 2008, we sort of dropped the question, or dropped the idea, by moving actually into a new home. Fair enough. We chose to settle in like everybody else did. So, but about 3 years later, which would have been 2011, the conversation became more serious again. You'd see we'd felt something going on in our hometown for years. And the older that the kids got, the less we could actually deny it, first and foremost, and the less that we actually wanted them exposed to it. Scarier yet, the more we recognized it, the more we realized that we'd begun to succumb to it as well. So what was happening there, as we came to realize, was a community-wide self-confidence problem. It resulted in people just generally fearing risk and settling for things. And so we didn't see much ambition to make the city better, to make actually Fort Wayne more palatable for young people, so they'd want to stay. And there was a lot of self-interest, which kept things really small scale and disjointed, disconnected. So what that ended up doing is it stunted the city's growth and their ability to actually compete with larger markets like Indianapolis and Chicago. So, but you see, the funny thing is that we saw it not so much actually in the business and the entrepreneurial community, but actually in the people themselves, in our family, in neighbors, just folks in general. They rested on their laurels, or they tended to, and were resistant to change. And so they were actually really kind of comfortable with the status quo. So at the end of it all, really, they just largely didn't trust homegrown efforts or bigger projects, and probably for good reason. The vast majority of shopping and dining options there were big corporate deals, stable, recognizable names you could trust, you could rely on them. It wasn't your mom and pop shop that was going to be there for maybe 6 months and then go out. You could trust it was going to be there because it was fill in the blank. The major employers besides the government, schools, healthcare, they really just, honestly, they consisted of a lot of national manufacturing companies that had maybe a presence there of some sort. On occasion, one of those big guys would up and leave, or they'd lay off. I mean, it would hurt, but another would come back, really. It would take some time, but really that ended up slowing down as well. Like General Electric, you had this huge campus in Fort Wayne that was, I don't know, 3 to 5 buildings. Some of them were like 8 stories tall, and the number of jobs that are there right now, I believe, is 100. Everybody else is in Mexico or elsewhere. So at that point, new restaurants and actually new retail would open up, and people would actually get excited about that. That's what they get excited about is, hey, BW3s is coming to town. Great. As far as projects went through the 80s and the 90s, Fort Wayne actually suffered through many of the same downtown initiatives and revitalization projects that Colorado Springs did, and a lot of them had the same kind of catchy names that really went nowhere. But in my opinion, all of it combined actually caused a big fear of the unknown. People settled for life, and they often said things like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, or there's not much to do here, but it's a great place to raise your family. Well, what happens when your family actually up and moves away? So when we really started to talk about these things and what it meant for our family, it actually sparked something within us. What we wanted to actually be different, better people. We wanted to explore and engage and do things. We wanted to make progress as individuals and as a family. And honestly, we wanted to just be active and live around those who were active. To be around those investing both in themselves and their city. Frankly, what drove most of the conversation to move from Fort Wayne to here was that Fort Wayne in its present form at that time what effect it would have on our children, as it did many other families' children, and eventually it would more than likely drive them away, and we didn't want that. So we wanted to live in a place that our children wouldn't want to leave, a community that would set a good example for them. We wanted to live in a city that was going somewhere, that allowed you to be yourself, but to also be among others with the same strong morals that, frankly, we found in our Midwest roots. So we wanted a community that recognized how important it is to actually come together as a community, because that's where momentum happens, sort of like the "and" that Laura talked about. Above all, we wanted a community to help propel us as parents in that direction so our children could see it firsthand. We didn't want them to watch us struggle to, progress and then see their fellow citizens be content with sitting on their hands. So we wanted to teach them that you can always improve and to not have fear in doing so. That's the most important thing. So here was the big question. We could move anywhere we wanted to go. Where could we move that would offer us all of these things, and even if our children decided to move away someday, would minimize that distance between us. After a lot of research, including census data, hours on Google Earth, best of lists, we had it narrowed to probably a few places. Our goal was to actually visit one or so per year until we actually found what we were looking for. And we didn't get past number 1. It was so awesome coming here. But we did that in 2011. We fell in love, as so many do here. We fell in love with the view, of course, but we also fell in love with the friendliness of the people, the acceptance of pets in public. Doesn't happen in the Midwest much. Cool local shops, the local food, all the things to see, do, and be. We fell in love with the zoo, Garden of the Gods, Pikes Peak, downtown, the view of Pikes Peak from downtown. We fell in love with all of it. Part of it, though, is we fell in love with how many completely unique and important things that call Colorado Springs home. And that's the Air Force Academy, Focus on the Family, Compassion International, and especially the Olympic Committee and the national governing bodies. We're not talking about companies that make our favorite widget and just happen to be located here. We're talking about important world-class things that are so vital to our nation and the world. These organizations are actually at the apex of people doing important things, making forward progress, and making something special out of both themselves and others. And that's what we wanted to be around. So this is exactly what City for Champions means to us. It's this community, as mighty as it may be in its beauty, capitalizing on those things. It's Colorado Springs planting a flag as the capital for young people that want to improve themselves and make a better version of themselves. Why wouldn't we want to have a vibrant downtown with not one, but 2 world-class, state-of-the-art venues that our national governing bodies could have an event and bring hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people in from other states just to observe, to get a view of what this gem is? Why wouldn't we want that? It's not Denver, it's not Oklahoma City, it's not Indianapolis. Here. We have a chance to get it here. To us, City for Champions is this city standing up and saying that if you want your children to become better versions of themselves, to be active and to watch their community succeed, and to be inspired to start a business or to get a world-class education or to just plain take a risk, you come here, right here, to the base of Pikes Peak. So think about this logically for just a minute. Had Fort Wayne been able to keep, had actually been able to put aside bickering, unwillingness to change sooner, had they been able to keep my wife, my 2 kids, my friends, my wife's friends, their kids, my cousins and me, it would have been able to keep all of our tax dollars needed for infrastructure, improvements, maintenance, and whatever else comes down the pike. More importantly, it would have been able to keep our talents and our contributions. What would that have done for a city like Fort Wayne? I mean, who in their right mind can actually call Fort Wayne a destination? They need all the people they can get. So in conclusion, those that achieve great levels of success will tell you that one of the very first things you do is surround yourself with others who are themselves successful and have momentum. You see, a project like City for Champions, it does a lot of things, like showcasing the gem that this place is. But it also affects local change and encourages momentum. You see, when a community has momentum, it gives its young talent, its future business leaders and taxpayers a vision that makes them want to stay and play their part. When it gives them that opportunity, it hangs on to them and their talents. When they stay, they become even more invested in the community so that they build businesses. When the community builds businesses, it creates jobs. And when it creates jobs, it shores up its tax base. And when it shores up its tax base, it solidifies its infrastructure and its future. So now imagine what a project like City for Champions can do for this community. And it's time that we imagine our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, young man. It is always nice to hear the perspective of a 13-year-old. I love hearing that because you help remind us of what's so cool and what's so great about being here. And thank you for picking out the gems and reminding everybody of that as well. I don't think Fort Wayne's going to thank you, though. But that's okay because we like the advertisement for us. So now we have time to answer questions, to receive feedback. We have people here who can answer questions about the projects. We have people here who can receive feedback, the decision makers, for what's going on. So if you have a question, then I'm going to come back and give you the mic. Mrs. Murray.
Thank you, Stephanie. My name is Susan Murray, and I have attended as many of these meetings as I have been able to get to, which is probably about 6. This is the first time I felt impelled to actually stand up and say something. I could send you all emails with this particular feedback, but I think it's simpler if I just tell you now. I have 3 simple points that I'd like to make about tonight's meeting. The first one is I want to thank each of you on the panel who has given your time and your effort to be here tonight to update us and to share your perspective on the City for Champions. I really do say that with the greatest appreciation, especially Mr. Geiger and Mr. Geiger, because you are not actually a part of the overall organization, and therefore your volunteerism is extremely appreciated. Having said that, my second point is those of us who raised our hands, which I believe was the majority, there's about 40 of us here tonight, excluding the panel, have all indicated that we have been to these meetings before. Therefore, beyond the respect I have for your time and effort, I have to say that Laura's presentation of the history and Mr. Geiger's presentation of why he came to the city is basically preaching to the choir. We get it. I mean, we do understand what this city is about. We understand where we've come from. We understand why it's so popular. The third point I have to make is totally germane to the reason for this update meeting, and that is to be updated. I do not understand why Mr. Celeste is the only representative of the 4 different points of this project who has taken the time and effort to be here tonight to update us. Commissioner Lathan basically said that the state has stopped working on it. They've stonewalled us. We don't know why they have stopped reporting. I don't know. You've basically said that the state is not. They're working.
There we go. We're waiting for the state.
We're waiting for
and
the
I
state.
can't. I'm not the state, so I can't speak to why it's taken a little bit longer than we would have expected. But indeed, we are waiting for the state, and kind of by the nature of providing updates, we said from the beginning there might be some times when we don't have anything new to give you, and we honestly don't. I don't know about the other project elements, but if nothing new has happened, like I said, we might be a little boring sometimes because there's no new update. So I did not say that they're stalling us. I just said we're waiting for them. And they have a process to go through, and they've been very busy with a lot of different things I know that they've had on their agendas. So we're simply waiting for them. Because we've chosen not to have a meeting in July, by August, I'm fairly confident, although I don't control anything at the state, that we will have a signed resolution. We'll have all of that information to share, and hopefully at that point, new information to share about various projects. Certainly the county will have, by that time, I hope, new information to share on our study, that we don't have anything new from last month. And we'll be able to really kick off some more information, more substantive information.
Getting back to my initial point of respect, to my way of thinking, it would show respect for the people who choose to attend and take time out of their Tuesday evening if you would show the respect to us in having representatives from each of the 4 projects. Because even if you don't have anything to share with us, perhaps we have questions that have come up since we had the last opportunity to talk to you. And so if you could respect our need to ask questions, then I think having a representative from each of the 4 different parts of this project would be a great step towards communication.
And we do have representatives from each of the projects. So we just chose to highlight a project that had something going on. Let me speak to you about UCCS. Everything Brian Burnett said last month still holds. So I work for UCCS, and our project is ready to go. We're ready. We've interviewed consultants, and we're ready to break the ground as soon as the state comes back with the contract. So,
and we have the city, and we have Air Force Academy here, and so if there are questions about those specific projects.
Do you have updates? Do you have anything new you'd like to say?
No, other than to say that, many of us are involved in behind-the-scenes due diligence and project development activities that, on a month-to-month basis, it's just difficult to, or not difficult, but it just really don't result in exciting updates. In my case, for our project, we've started, I've been working on the environmental assessments that we need to do for the locations that we're assessing for our visitor center. Also been working with our headquarters, an organization that's going to help us with the public-private approach that we intend to take with the project for financing it. So, there's some activity going on behind the scenes. And my take is when we achieve a significant milestone for our project, then certainly we'll bring it to this meeting and share it with you and answer any and all your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bob, Amy, anything on the Sports and Events Center? Any updates?
I'm sorry to say, I guess we're a little slow, we're a little boring. There's just nothing new at this point
Okay.
that we have.
Thank
I don't
you.
know about you, Bob.
Anything from you? Okay.
Referring back again to the resolution at the state, that's going to be important to be able to constitute the RTA advisory board, so that group can start overseeing what some of the other project elements are doing. That will also be a good point to start putting more specific advocacy for the Colorado Sports and Events Center. That one is going to take the most time. It's the most complicated. It's the most expensive. It could be a year or 2 before that project is planned out in detail. So updates will come through that process. Sometimes they'll be big, sometimes they'll be small, but progress will get steadily made over the next year or 2.
And I guess, Stephanie, if I could, sure, it's not much of an update, but I'm just trying to think of activity that the county has had. Obviously, I would say, and everybody knows, probably the controversial portion of what we're discussing with all of this is the TIF. So the presentations are tremendous. I think we can articulate all day long why these projects make sense and are a tremendous potential for this community in so many ways. And it comes down to, yeah, but what about the public participating through tax increment financing? That's where it all comes down, right? And so to the extent for the county in the resolution, and honestly, the dates and all the meetings get mixed up, so I think this is probably within the last month. We have had discussions about the resolution. The county has proposed, as you all know, the potential of participating with our own share back of the TIF from the county sales tax portion. That's above the base and the growth level. And so essentially what that is taking new revenue generated by new projects and out-of-state visitors, new dollars being spent in our region, and investing a portion of that back in. It's not taking any money out of the general fund. It's not taking money away from services. In fact, it's adding money to the general fund and to those services. All that said, with that potential partnership in this project that we've been talking about so long, the county wants to make sure that in the resolution we are represented in such a way that we can account to our constituents, that we are a part of the sports and events complex in its formation, in its governance going forward. When we put that kind of commitment, that kind of potential on the table, we need to make sure that we're at that table in making those decisions. And so we have had discussions about that as it relates to the resolution. We will wait to see if the state of Colorado wants that kind of language that says the county is going to participate in that element, if they want it in the resolution, or if they'd rather have it in a different kind of document. Would they rather have that in a memo of understanding later on? And in as much as there is language in the resolution that speaks to the sports and events complex, the county wants to be a part of that language. So we have had discussions about that. We are waiting to see what the state has to say. And again, that's kind of where we are. So we need to, I can't share more than that because we just haven't heard back from the state. And when we do, we'll be able to advance from
And that is a very normal process with the state. This is not unusual. Governor Celeste, did you want to add anything to this?
I can only give you my hunches because I'm not sitting in Denver. I don't have agents in Denver who give me good intelligence about what's going on. But there was a meeting of the Economic Development Commission at the beginning of the month. We had presented what we thought, the city presented its perspective on what it would like from the resolution. And there were important questions involved. I mean, for example, one of the questions is, are all four projects in bed together, or in a sense, can these projects be treated individually? So that if for example, one of the four didn't happen, that wouldn't impair the opportunity for the other three to benefit from the tax increment financing. So there were important issues that were put before the commission to decide. My sense of it is, and now I'm speaking totally, one of the things they say about governors, I like our governor here in Colorado, but we are a mile wide and an inch deep, and we specialize in data-free research. So this is data-free research based on my own experience 30 years ago, right? Something goes to the commission, the commissioners discuss it, then they turn to staff and say, here's what we want you to do, bring it back to us at our next meeting, and we will decide whether it's in form to sign. And so my hunch, and this is only my hunch, is we're waiting for the communications between staff to the commission and the commission. And I don't know when the commission meets next. It's probably sometime in July.
July 9th.
Okay, July 9th. If I were a betting man, I'm not. If I were a betting man, I'd bet we'll get something back from them, which is what they're ready to sign. And we're going to have to decide whether we're ready to sign it as a community. So that's just my sense of, if you want data-free update.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Murray? I see you, and we'll get to you. But I want to see if any of our newcomers have anything. Anthony?
Governor, Commissioner. So my name is Anthony Perez. I'm a business owner. Success is a Language. I also sit on the board with the NAACP. So since our last meeting, a couple questions have come up, even with some partners in Chicago. So I had two questions. One was a two-parter, and oddly enough, it really kind of ties in with some of the things that were just stated. One, as Stephanie reminds me when we speak and we meet each other, she kindly reminds me that, Anthony, we've been doing this for a year now in meetings and whatnot. Yet, when I meet with people, they go, yeah, it has been a year, but yet there's no who, why, what, and clarity as far as jobs. Healthcare is how people perceive the UCCS project. I identify with healthcare. My wife's a nurse, but it's really sports medicine and performance. When will we get a list, not exact numbers, but specifics so people in our community could identify and see what opportunities there are for them? Is that contingent on the resolution? Because I know it's like putting a business plan together. So I would hope that we would already know what labor and what leadership we would need to make each project run. When do you anticipate having that? Because you also alluded to the bids, Governor. It's good to support local. At the same time, what is that process moving forward for all the projects and to ensure that our minority owners get their fair share of opportunity in the projects?
Right. Well, I can say with confidence that the contractor will be somebody who you know locally, who hires locally, and that the contractor and the subcontractors will be here. We're not bringing in somebody from outside. So I would think that the construction jobs will be open to the community, and hopefully there'll be aggressive efforts to hire minorities in the process. One of the interesting things, let me just say this as a footnote, but it's another aspect of this. We want to design the most accessible building that has ever been built in the country, because it will be not just the Olympic Museum, but Paralympic Museum and Hall of Fame. So we want to make it really special, which is going to present, it was part of our conversation, for example, with Architects of Record, what experience have you had with contractors, what experience have you had on accessibility and so on. We did a feasibility study that's now probably a year and a half old that contained 4 years or 5 years of operating projections, what it would take, because we want to build a museum that will sustain itself. We don't want to have to come back and raise money to keep the doors open. And in that work, our consultants are people who operated the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum in Cleveland, who built and operate to this day the Spy Museum in Washington, who built and are coordinating the operation of the Mob Museum in Las Vegas, and probably 20 other museums around the country. So we have a business plan that lays out jobs by category, by anticipated salary, what we think the operating expense will be, and so on. And I see no reason why. That's subject to change. So, I mean, I think if we put this out, it will evolve as the building is designed and as we see what else is going on. But I think you're right. I mean, there needs to be, for us to do this prudently, we need to have those kinds of, that kind of analysis done, and we need to find ways to share it with people.
And from what you just stated, it seems like your project, you've taken the due diligence based on what you've shared with me.
I sure hope so.
We could only assume that it's the same for the other projects. To echo what Ms. Murray was saying, it just seems like that information isn't coming, so maybe we can get that. And like I said, it's really about just kind of getting an idea, people on board, what is the opportunity as far as employment's a very important piece. And I know in the medical field, that's cutting edge, but also how many are going to be internally through the college and recruiting from the nation at high levels, and what is that for folks? Because also that's an opportunity to, inspire people to move in that direction if they're at a crossroads as far as what am I going to do for education and career. Oh, well, maybe I should pursue this and stay here instead of go in some other political science and move across the country. So.
Yeah, I have Stephanie's microphone, or you have Stephanie's microphone.
Right. So then, of course, I like the ideas that you all touched on, because one of the concerns was about branding and marketing. You know, we have a great place here for music festivals, and we have AEG in our backyard. But the one question I had was, since we're talking about TIF, coming from Chicago, I appreciate architecture. And when you look at what's on the website and the conversations with people in the Southeast Corridor or some of the areas of concern, well, you know, from the outside, when you look at an equation that consists of urban renewal, a C4C project, and discussions of TIF, that could lead to gentrification, right? It could be a concern. There's pros and cons on gentrification. Being from Chicago, I've seen the benefits, but I've seen the negative sides. Is that something that's, how are we looking at the TIF? Is that something, because you've even mentioned, Laura, the idea is we're going to build it, but is it out with the old and in with the new? And we want to increase retail and business, but at the same time, does that mean that eventually down the line people do have a legitimate concern that one day this area is going to be a TIF district, and well, maybe we're going to leverage it for new things where people can't afford to live in those areas because of taxes, and now you're forcing people out, which causes an employment issue, a more of a transportation issue, and displacement issues. So that is a legitimate concern.
Sure, great question. You know, I think it is a kind of a logical association to compare the state RTA financing to an urban renewal type TIF financing, because there are a lot of similarities there. What I would say about the RTA TIF, and if the city and the county were to follow that same formula and mimic what the state is doing, you're looking at a little different situation. You're looking at 90% of the city boundary being included in that TIF area. And again, it's very specified. It's a lot of research and data and math went into determining what portion would come out of that 90% of the city. It's 13% of the growth. It's not the base. It's not inflation. It's not other growth. It's 13% of that growth. But it would come out of the entire city area, paid by those 513,000 new visitors, not by local citizens, and come in and help finance that project. So I wouldn't expect there to be regentrification from the state type TIF, but then the downtown venues are planned to be located in the existing Southwest Downtown Urban Renewal area. You could anticipate, since that plan is about 12 to 15 years old, we've lost 25 years of the bond amortization period that you would get. You can anticipate that a new plan will be done that will incorporate the City for Champions projects, that will incorporate what now would be expected to be spin-off development from the City for Champions project, and there would be potential for urban renewal tax increment financing just on that 100 so acres. Now you could see regentrification occur in that area. However, it's vastly populated with vacant and underutilized and run down industrial type structures. No residential to speak of. So I don't think you're going to see any of the negative effects. I think you would only see the positive effects.
If I could just add one more comment as it relates to jobs, because I think that's a good question. Those 2,200 jobs that I mentioned outside, over and above the construction jobs, those economists that I mentioned that did the studies, they did drill down deeper. And we are going to be prepared to give you just a little flavor of that at the meeting on the 25th, and then further unveil it at our August meeting. Because we have held, I'd have to ask, God bless you, somewhere in the neighborhood of 135, 137 community conversations in the past year, and that question comes up, the TIF question comes up, and so we want to be able to share even more information coming up in the August meeting. But because you asked, and somehow I knew you were going to ask that question on June 25th. I don't remember how. we're going to go a little bit deeper on the jobs issue. So thank you, Anthony.
Great, thank you. Let me go back to this gentleman, and then Mr. Murray will end the evening with you.
Hi, I'm Scott Lowenberg. I just had a question about the Sports and Event Center. I'm actually very pumped about the museum. I think that's great. And the UCCS and Air Force, I mean, hey, that's great for them. I've worked with sports corporations in the past and know a lot about the Sports Corporation and USOC and obviously the World Arena and Colorado College, UCCS, Air Force facilities. I'm assuming this new stadium is going to have an indoor-outdoor track, which will be something new to this area. But I'm just wondering, like, what other events will be added that the Sports Corporation and the USOC couldn't have already been doing over the years with the current facilities already here? I'm just kind of wondering. I mean, I'm excited to know, but wondering about that.
Thank you. Laura, do you want to take that?
I'm going to actually have Bob. He's closest to that, and since Luke and Doug aren't here, Bob, if I could just have you comment. Thank you.
And I was finishing up a side conversation here, but I think the essence of your question is what new events could be held at the Sports and Event Center that we couldn't currently hold. As part of this whole process, when we were first looking at the downtown sports venue, as you know, it was more of a traditional baseball stadium. Still, we knew that it had to have about 200 events per year, with baseball making up about 70 of those games. So more than double they had to come from other areas. And really what happened through the process is working with the national governing bodies, with the Olympic Committee, talking about the museum, but having them direct our attention back to the Sports and Event Center. They were telling us that if we had the proper sports venue here, that we could hold a good number of our thousands of events around the country and even around the world without having to load up our athletes and our coaches and our equipment and spending our money in other cities. They were the ones that were excited about that. So, they have local competitions, they have trials, they have regional and state and international competitions in each of those sports. It would only take a small fraction of those to really anchor this venue, this facility. For the application that we put into the state, it listed specific events that the NGBs hold now, an estimate of how many people attend, and we asked the managers of those governing bodies which ones are the most likely to be held at this venue. So it was based on that kind of detail. A lot more will have to be done as this thing is designed, and we know exactly what it looks like. We talk to the experts that really know how to design, own, and operate these venues. But that type of collaboration with the NGBs and the USOC is going to be a big part of it. But we have already identified specific events that are not held here now, which could be in the future.
And one of the exciting things that happened when we were putting all this together is that the NGBs came to us and said, this would be so exciting if we could hold our events here instead of going out to other states to do it. And so USA Wrestling, USA Volleyball, UCCS has talked about doing some of our sports downtown if it's possible to make arrangements for that as well. So there's did you have other things in mind then? Yeah, there's a lot of different examples.
Not that they couldn't be a part of that, we just might want to be careful that, you publicize, hey, we're going to have all these events. It's not just going to be a minor league switchback soccer team down there.
Yeah,
I understand why they're excited about it.
Sure, they're just one part of the conversation. So, okay, we're going to have any other questions before I go to Mr. Murray, because he's going to be our last one. Okay, in the back.
Good evening, everyone. I apologize for my tardiness. I heard Laura allude to a meeting on the 25th. I'm J.J. Frazier. I'm the chair of the board of directors for the Urban Knights, leading the Pikes Peak region. And I am inviting you all to attend our meeting on Wednesday, June 25th at 6 p.m. at the Urban Knights Center. We're located at 506 East Marino Avenue. And I invite you to attend this meeting because at that time you will hear the perspective of the minority community as it pertains to C4C. And there might be some questions there that we might not hear in this arena this evening. So I invite you to join us. Thank
That's
you.
great. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming tonight. Here you go, sir.
Thank you. We always save the best for last, ladies and gentlemen. So let's go back over the conversations we had. This gentleman, sir, if you would, look at the North Nevada project, the TIF money that went there. What direct benefit did you get from that? You better check on it, sir. You didn't get any. All right, let's go back over the discussions we've had, and the devil's in the details. First of all, the information is incomplete, inconsistent, and inaccurate. Now, it's failed 2 separate audits, independent audits, ladies and gentlemen. Now, there's a third audit in process. Ms. Lathan, when did the process start for the third-party audit? But it has started. Well, things are so bad, okay, that the county commission had to spend, what, $45,000? Or am I looking at 2 different environments? Had to spend money, our money, to get an independent third-party audit to verify that these numbers were in fact correct. Now, there's something wrong with what we're hearing here. They started with 3,500 jobs. It's now 5,100 jobs. We've now been promised moderate to high-paying salaries in these jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, we just heard a gentleman saying, "You can't." Well, I don't believe the Switchbacks, who are the only commitment to this stadium, are going to be able to keep this stadium afloat. If they can't keep it afloat, you will. Operating expenses will come out of your budget. It's every bit the pool or the hot tub or the lease agreement you signed that you wish you'd gotten rid of years ago. It should come to public ballot. There should be no question. It should not be just on local funding or local bonding, so to speak. This whole thing is a dog and pony show. They refuse to give you the information. As a matter of fact, you will not get the disclosure, the financial information, unless you sign a non-disclosure statement. Ask them for it. Ask them where the pro forma data is for the stadium. They actually, Mr. Cope actually told the EDC that the Switchbacks, who are the commitment thing, would have over 6,600 people at each one of the games. Now, the entire league shows only 2,300 per game. Now, without going any further, okay, the question for Ms. Newman is, what do you mean by local bonding? Is this the only circumstance that allows us to vote? Or are you going to have to swallow whatever we get in the resolution?
And let me take your, thank you. Yeah.
Mr. Murray, I simply stated what Mayor Bach, the mayor of our community, our city, stated as a result. If it goes to the taxpayers, that's his commitment. That is not his only commitment, but that is the commitment that he made at this time. So when you talk about going to the public for a vote, I happen to think it's premature. What would we vote on? So that is my own individual perspective, but if someone else would like to make a comment, you're certainly welcome to.
I'll just make a quick comment on some of the comments that were made, and I just grabbed my pen. So actually, things are not bad. Actually, things are so good that El Paso County, as we do in all financial decisions, are doing our due diligence to determine whether or not the investment of public funds in the form of a tax increment of the new revenue is prudent to do. That's why things are so good, because you have accountability and you have a process where we are going through and doing our own independent analysis of the numbers that we are being given. We're not accepting them on face value. We are looking at them as to what the impact would be for El Paso County and for the entire region. That's why things are so good, because we are doing that kind of accountability. The NDAs come up all the time. That doesn't have anything to do on the county side. I don't think it has anything to do really on the city side, but in terms of the project elements, there are negotiations that are underway with each project element, whether it's the museum and architects and the process that they're under, or UCCS and their project and how they're going to bid that project. There are certain things that when you look at whether it's real estate acquisition or bids or kind of negotiations with contractors or any number of things that are competitive, proprietary at certain stages. At no time has anyone said that money, that the proposal for tax increment financing from either the city or the county will not be disclosed to the public. In fact, it's all disclosed. You all have the numbers. You know exactly what's being proposed. You know exactly what the estimates are for the possible partnership. We've got two different elements. We have the state increment, which is the $120.5 million, which is based on the estimates and assumptions which are being analyzed. And then we have the potential of a city TIF matching that formula and a county TIF matching that formula. All of that is public. All of that as we go forward will be done in public because that's the way we operate and that's what we're required to do. And so anything as it relates to non-disclosure agreements that were ever contemplated are related to the specifics for each project as it relates to their contracting for those projects. Not the overall project, not the public potential in financing whatsoever. I think that might have been all there was, but certainly as proposed, this project does not contemplate general fund obligations. It does not contemplate in any way, shape, or form, regardless of what anyone says on a radio show or anything else, a tax increase of any kind. It contemplates the potential of investing some portion of new sales tax revenue back into the projects themselves to bring more revenue into the community. That's what it proposes.
Yes, I thought I'd touch on a couple of those. I tried to make notes very quickly here. On the job counts and how the numbers seem to grow. When the application was being performed or prepared for the state, at first we thought it was maybe going to be a 3-month, 90-day window to get that application done. In the end, it turned out to be 6 or 7 months, but we didn't know that at the beginning. They had specific questions that they wanted to know about jobs. And it was the estimated number of employees that would be working on at those 4 venues. And that's what was provided, and we were successful. Then after we were successful in December, we knew this was going to become more of a community and a local conversation as opposed to a state conversation and what people would be interested in. So then we started to dig into the direct job impacts, the indirect job impacts, and the induced impacts. And that's where we started getting more detail into those job numbers. So that's why you started getting a more robust idea of what the job picture might be. And that does not include the and that Laura was talking about and the catalytic effect going forward. It's just the direct working at the venues, those where they're spending their money for food suppliers and janitor service and architects and engineers and insurance agents and bankers and the things that we all need to operate these kinds of facilities. On the stadium operating costs, the statement that you made about citizens having to pick up the tab, I mean, that just isn't correct. I think it's important that everyone understand that City for Champions, if successful, will build these 4 venues. But each of the 4 entities that will own and operate these will be 100% responsible for their operating expenses and any operating shortfalls that they might experience. The good news is, because City for Champions will be built by this capital project, they won't pay rent, they won't pay debt service, so they should be able to operate and generate enough net operating income to cover their operating costs and contribute to an operating reserve and to be able to refresh the projects. Refusing to release the information, I mean, I think it's critical. The reason we have these monthly meetings, the reasons we put out so many documents, and we've had so
They cut you off because it's after 7.
Oh, ran out of electricity. I mean, there's been a huge effort to be transparent. The application is 854 pages. It's on the website, and you can see that. The minuscule amount of information that is only available by NDA has to do with somebody giving out their private business information that they gave to us as a courtesy to help us with the application, and under the condition that it wouldn't be shared publicly, so their vendors and suppliers wouldn't know what they were spending. So when they came time to renegotiate their contracts, they'd come to the table knowing all the information. It just makes logical sense, and that information is available through NDA. But it is a tiny amount of the information, and it doesn't impact how these projects work. And then just to follow up on the vote question, I don't think any of us have said that this will or will not go to a vote. I think what we've said is that every tax increment financing project in the history of Colorado Springs, at least that I'm aware of, was established by City Council and did not go to a vote. In the end, as a community, we all might decide that a vote is appropriate. What I can tell you is the group is committed to following the appropriate process to put this tax increment financing in place, whatever that is.
So we're going to end our evening, Rich, with the Gazette. I want to clear up any misconceptions, if I may. Well, no, we have representatives from all the venues here. We're receiving all the information. And so, just so people know, I just don't want any misinformation out there. We have everybody here representing the different projects. Let me just make something really, really clear. We invite your hard questions. We invite you pointing things out that may be difficult or may be something that hasn't been thought of or gives a new perspective. We even invite your dissension in this, your opposition to it, because guess what? We live in a city and a county and a country that allows for that. And every morning when I watch the news and I see what they're doing in Iraq, and when you don't agree with people and what they do to you over there, when you don't agree, I say bring it on. Bring on the hard questions. Bring on that you don't support it. Bring on that maybe you don't like the projects. Bring it on. Because that's why we're here. That's why we do these meetings every single month. That's why this group, many of us are out giving presentations. I'm giving one Thursday. Bob gave one last week. Laura, you did one Monday morning. Amy, you've done a bunch of them. We're out everywhere. We have Facebook to get feedback. We have the website to get, people can send their questions in through the website so they don't have to be public about it if they don't want to be. We've done over 125 public meetings on it, and we say let's do 125 more. Let's have more difficult questions. Let's have this robust community conversation, and let's do great things with the passion behind both sides, because we can. We're allowed. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for caring enough to come hear about this. And we will see you in August when we are going to take something that Anthony said to us and do some cool things with it. So stay tuned. And thank you very much. Good night.